guys. So today I'm going to talk about the story. Oh, I like this light up on my face. The light of Jesus reflecting on me. Okay, anyway. Go back to my point now. I'm going to go in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel chapter 3. And I'm going to read through it, through some of it with y'all in case you haven't heard the story. Try to talk about it a little bit, but this isn't going to be a long video. I just want to point on a few things, and this story, if you haven't heard it, is very powerful. So, I'm going to go through some of it starting at verse 12 and then talk about it after. Okay. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. Furious with rage, the king summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and the king said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I have made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, "King, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." So I'm going to pause right there because I want to point on that, and then I'll continue. But on that point where he says, "But even if he does not, we want you to know, we still will not serve you. We will not worship you." They had their mind set up from the beginning that they were not going to change it. They were still going to serve their God. I'm going to go keep reading at that point. Then the king was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times harder than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then the king leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that were tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." The king then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and everyone crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then the king said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. I'm also going to go back to where it said, "They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own." Shouldn't we all be that way? Trust in him and be willing to give up our own lives rather than serve or worship any other God or any other thing in our life. They trusted him, and they said, whether he brings us out of this, or whether, go back and read that line actually, because it's so, instead of me just quoting it, it's so like powerful, just digging into that one line. He said, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, we still will not serve you. Shouldn't we all have that made up mind like they did? Have the made up mind like Job? This story reminds me of Job having a made up mind. They had a made up mind, Job had a made up mind. That they were going to serve through the fire. They were literally in a fire, and Job had all this stuff coming up in his life, like he was going through fire in life. But what if we could use these things as we're going through this fire in our life, as we're getting thrown into a fire? What if we could use these things and set us on fire for God? That we become stronger in God. That we open our eyes to see and to trust him, to know he's really there, instead of going in life with fear and doubt and worry, and looking at our situations and saying, oh, God's there, instead of not having a made up mind and going, maybe he can save me from this situation, but I don't know about this situation. Keep your made up mind for every situation. Trust in him, that he's right there, that he's your second man walking through the fire with you. You will never go through your fire alone, because he's walking through it with you. There were 3 men, and then there were 4. Jesus was walking in that fire. All 3 of them were unharmed because he was walking in that fire with them. All the soldiers, they felt that heat from the fire and they were down. But Jesus came in and walked around it with them. Is there something causing you to not have a made up mind? Maybe your past, to where you can't look at your next situation and have your made up mind because you're fearing or you're worrying or you're doubting that the same thing is going to happen again? Lose that. You're out of that situation now. You're through that fire. Look ahead, because there's going to be greater things, and God has walked through that situation with you, and God's going to walk through the next situation with you. Look ahead. Keep your mindset. Jesus arose with freedom at hand. He's given us freedom from the start. Jesus has given us a life free of worry, free of doubt, free of fear from the beginning. But we're putting it in there. We're worrying, we're fearing, and we're doubting. But Jesus came so that we can have a life more abundantly, so we can be free. That should be your main thing to focus on, that you should be free. You should be walking through your fire, and yeah, it's intense. How do you think they felt? Like they had their mind made up, but that fire was intense. The fire you're going through in your situation is intense. But having your made up mind and knowing who's walking through with you and having that different perspective changes everything. As you're being in this fire, open your ears to hear what God's saying in it. Open your eyes to see what he's trying to show you, to see him in it, to see the light in the situation instead of the darkness. Because light outshines the darkness. The fire of man has no power over those burning with the fire of God. Keep the fire of God burning in your life. Sometimes we tend to lose it, but think about when you're on fire for God, and then think about when you lose that fire. You look back and you're like, That was so great. I was so on fire for God. I want that back. You don't have to lose it. You never have to lose your fire for God. You can keep it, and you can use your situations to build your fire. Because as you build your fire and your relationship grows with God, and you see Him in everything, and you begin to change your perspective on every situation instead of going back and forth saying, God can change this situation, but He can't change that one. That mindset doesn't get you anywhere. Keep the mindset of God's in every situation. God's going to bring me out of it, and I can see the light in this. Keep seeing the light in it. Don't lose your hope. Don't lose your focus. Keep your focus on Him. Keep your mind made up. God will bring you through the fire. That's in Psalms 66:12. And we just read a story where He brought them through the fire. He went in the fire with them and brought them right out. Walked in it with them. They were unharmed. Not even their hair was singed. They came out of that unharmed. You're going to come out of your situation unharmed. Your situations are going to make you stronger. They're going to build you. They're going to grow. They're going to help you grow with Him. Let your fire begin to rekindle in you. Just pray for God to open your eyes in this situation. But know that He's walking in it with you. He's not going to let you go through this fire alone. And you're going to come in this, and you're going to use this to set your own fire for Him. I know I'm kind of saying the same thing, but this was the main points I was trying to make in this video. To have a made up mind, because when you have that made up mindset, everything changes for you. So keep that made up mindset, trust in Him, and don't give up. Just use this situation as you're walking through fire, be set on fire. God's gonna grow you. I hope you all have a blessed rest of your day, and I will be posting another video soon.